feels. Big feels. For those of you that don't know, that was the Spice Girls tribute, ode, dare I say, to ex Red Bull Racing Team Principal Christian Horner. 20 years in the role, and we've held off posting a massive 19th show because this all happened, and Christian Horner and Red Bull thought, you know what? Don't show that. Here's something new to talk about Red Bull. We're here back on it's Thursday night, Australian time.
Show 20.
Show 20. We've called it the Horn Show. Because I think that's appropriate. But yeah, of course, massive news. Not as massive for us because we called it like 3 months ago, but massive news for everybody else. Welcome to the Top Step. Of course, I am Stu, and I'm joined by the one, the only Rhyss Ashmore. Rhyss Ashmore. As we try and cut through the swathe of stuff that's come out over the last 24 hours, we deliberately held off doing the show.
We did. We were trying to get the story and find out what was happening, and trying to obviously not jump the gun like we've seen in the past with info coming out. So we just wanted to get the whole picture beforehand.
Absolutely, we did. There's been lots of, dare we say, subpar media organisations coming out saying things, other podcasts and all that sort of stuff, but they haven't got the full story as it developed today. They probably cut it up into 4 little bits for you, but we've got everything in one place for you, and we are going to get the show off in our usual fashion. It should probably be a Red Bull tonight, shouldn't it? But it's not. So I'm just going to quickly give you a rundown because I think that it's really important to keep this in the context of the two sides of the story. We've got Christian Horner, the fantastic team principal, massive achievements in Formula One, and that second most successful team principal ever. And that side of the equation. And in fact, we've probably got to split it into thirds. We've got the how did we get to here? And then we've got the why and what's going to happen. What do we think the future looks like? So we're going to sort of split the show up into those sort of 3 segments. So starting first and foremost, maybe not everyone's aware. Some people who listen to the podcast weren't even born, including Kimi Antonelli. When Christian Horner took over or was appointed team principal of what became Red Bull Racing, but was actually Jaguar. And Jaguar was owned, I think it was a Jackie Stewart Jaguar Alliance. Terrible team, never scored a point. Ran around at the back of the grid with David Coulthard, I think, did drive or was still driving for them at the time all this happened. Anyway, fast forward 20 years with Christian Horner at the helm, 6 Constructors' Championships, 2 four-peats with Vettel and Verstappen as driver champions as well. 124 race wins, only behind Mercedes-Benz. 107 poles, 287 podiums. So that is a huge achievement. Obviously not solely Christian, but Christian brought the team together. Adrian Newey came across from McLaren at the time. He brought the team together, and that's his racing legacy.
Absolutely. And as the day that Red Bull became Red Bull from Jaguar was the day that Christian got appointed the team principal role. So he's been there from the beginning, created what Red Bull is today. And to anyone that knows the Red Bull team, everything had to do with Christian. So it's a massive change. And especially the way and how it's been done. Like we spoke previously in terms of other people in Formula One teams not really seeing out the year when things have gone a bit sour. So to see him go out for the summer break, it's odd timing with a lot of the other things that we've been speaking about as well.
Yeah, so we'll definitely get to that. And of course, you make a good point. When he was appointed team principal, youngest team principal ever in Formula One history at
31 years old.
Yeah, and Bernie Ecclestone had a lot to do with that as well. Talk about his legacy on the sport. But, I mean, he had a lot to do with getting him into the team. and of course saw massive success. So the one side of it that we have to appreciate is just how much that team has changed, basically from what Enzo Ferrari would have called garagistas, so a privately backed team, not aligned to any manufacturer at all, to now a team that has effectively, I don't know if it's finished or not, but has an in-house engine manufacturing capability, the only non-factory aligned team to have an engine manufacturing capability, of course, Mercedes being Mercedes, Ferrari being Ferrari, to next season, albeit Ford are involved, now having their own full integrated shop to build everything from start to finish, and
and
that facility there is huge.
yeah, and the size of that in the time under Christian as well, the development of the team in terms of how many employees they've got well over 1,000 employees at the team. The lives that he's changed with the bonuses that he's brought in from all the winning and the success, and the wind tunnel for the car and the wind tunnel for the engines, and just the performance center that he's built is ridiculous.
And the web as well, from it, because of course there's lots of people that have left Red Bull and gone to other teams and helped build those success. So again, the legacy there is huge, and whether you like him, don't like him, whether you believe what probably contributed ultimately to his downfall or not, that he did it, you can't overshadow what he's achieved within the sport in isolation, looking at his achievements as a team principal. He's probably more, I know race wins wise, not so much, but probably more successful than Frank Williams as a team principal in the window, the 20-year window that he's had. That's where it is. So look, let's move on to how did we get here? So I'm just going to run you through very quickly the sort of rundown of what happened, or the events that led to this. Now, I think it was in 2021, one of the founders of Red Bull and Red Bull Racing died. Now, he was, I'm just trying to find my notes on this so that I get the names correct, but he
Dietrich Makeshift.
it was.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was Dietrich, and he died, and he was heavily involved, heavily hands-on, heavily behind um, Horner, and as a consequence of that, there was a change in the way the team was run. Of course, at that time, Max Verstappen obviously was at his peak in terms of his powers. And then there was obviously the saga that everyone knows about with the text messages and the inappropriate engagement with allegedly, yeah, absolutely, allegedly, proven cleared twice by the team, inappropriate, say HR complaints and things like that came leaked to the press. And at that time, Jos Verstappen wanted to leave Christian at a petrol station and get him out of the team. So they created a power struggle, and the power struggle exists effectively between the Austrian, or the Europe, we'll call it European, but the Austrian European faction within the administration of Red Bull, and then the Asian side of it that actually owns a controlling share, owns 51% of Red Bull. So that sort of set up this issue where we continually had Yoss coming out with things and saying things and not wanting Christian to be there. And obviously we've got this speculation now of it reaching boiling point with Max potentially looking elsewhere, and Yoss openly criticising Horner.
I just do also just want to point out, and I probably haven't said this before, but Yoss is another one of those personalities that just sort of appears and said things just to say that he's still there. I think if he didn't speak half the crap that he just doesn't need to speak, I would forget he existed.
Yeah, he's that really loud parent at an under 12 soccer game. So he really is, but obviously he's got his son's best interest at heart. But we're now presented with this Horner Verstappen camp thing. When Dietrich Mateschitz died in 2022, big supporter of Horner, And then obviously after the issues that allegedly happened, we saw Adrian Newey depart. Rob Marshall departed. Jonathan Wheatley has gone to Sauber, and we've got Will Courtney who's gone to McLaren.
Yeah.
So he's lost a lot of the strength within the team, and you then pile on top of that the fact that they're a one-car team now. No one can drive the second car, probably since Daniel Ricciardo, to be brutally honest. Has anyone been able to drive that second car consistently? The constructors' title was probably over before the season even started, and it's going to take some really unique set of circumstances if Max was to win the driver's title. But we've called that for weeks on weeks that's been over. So the team's really at a point where 2026 becomes the focus. And that gets us to the situation where we need to drop in that there's the rumors about Ferrari and a meeting or an approach with Horner about a month ago. And there's also, obviously, as we mentioned, the rumors about Max going to Mercedes, which gets us to, and you've been very patient, gets us to the first question. Why now? Why today?
The only thing that I can think of, and the only thing that it really has made sense in all the circumstances I've run through my head, is that Max has activated his clause. Max has said, I'm out. This is where we are for the season. I'm out of here. And that's what he's put into. And then they've gone, cool. So now this is where the split happens. I don't then know that their counter is, we'll get rid of Horner if you stay. If the Yoss issue is still prevalent, you say he's not a fan of him. So look, we're gonna pack up our basketballs and leave if you don't get rid of him. Or they're like, cool, this has all started because of him, and we can't continue with him, knowing that we've lost, the absolute group bearings of their team. And not only in Max, but in Newey and a lot of the support staff as well that have left because of Horner.
So I want to come back to that, and it's apt that you're wearing a Charlotte Hornets hat as a segue. Does this stink of the late 90s Bulls?
It does stink.
Where you've got an agenda from an individual, and irrespective of the collateral damage on the way through, that agenda is going to be played out. And by agenda, I mean Yoss wanting Horner gone, irrespective of collateral damage. And, the Bulls organization, and it's ironic, of course, but the Bulls organization did a very similar thing with Jordan. Is this the same situation? Is it, what are there similarities? Am I way off?
You're definitely not way off. The issue I have with drawing a close on this is we need to see the other side. There's so many hands at play here. So to know if it fully stinks like the Bulls is to know that Max stayed. Now, if Max stayed, it stinks. But if he's activated his clause and that's why he's gone, then it's a little different.
So it's an interesting perspective because I didn't think about whether this was a knee-jerk reaction to Max activating his clause. Because for one, the clause can't be activated until the end of the next race. So he might have said to them, if we don't improve, I'm going, and you're in what you're saying. And I just struggle with. So they've put him on gardening leave, for starters. So whilst he's been removed, he's still employed by Red Bull until the end of the season, and his contract's until 2030. But he's definitely still employed by Red Bull until the end of the season. The constructors' title is gone. They've been a one-car team for a while. Yes, there's some signs that the car and the performance is plateauing. Obviously, there's the damage that you've spoken about internally. Max is contracted until the end of next year. The clause will activate whether Christian's there or not, because he's going to get to the middle of the year. I mean, they're just going to naturally get there, obviously. So with 2 race wins, some pole positions, and probably the writing on the wall at the end of last season that this is what they were looking at for this year, a new car in 2026 a new engine in 2026, is it a good time to bring in a new or even if it's a temporary keeper CEO to execute that when at the end of 2026 Max can just leave? Like, why? So I just, unless they know that it's going to come out that he's going to get convicted of doing the wrong thing, or like, I just don't get why now.
That's what I mean. There's so many hands at play, and there's so many spider webs connected to this, and they all suck. But the webs connected to this are so large that making a closed comment, like a closed comment on this at the moment, is entirely impossible because we don't know exactly what you said. Like after he was deemed innocent, then all the photos and the images were leaked, and it sort of went away from there again.
It's a
So,
huge question as to who leaked all that, by the way. And we're not going to allegedly allege on this show because we don't have enough money to defend ourselves, but allegedly allege that some sort of petrol station heathen might have had something to do with it, I reckon. But
yeah. Also, could have been a couple of other people as well, but again, don't have enough money to back save my ass on this one. So I'm not going to say too much more, but to it could have been somewhere that Max is being leaked to go and drive to, maybe a team principal from one of those teams. I'm not sure. Anyway, there's so many hands at play that I really don't know. If he did come out and they've actually found out, okay, cool, he did some bad stuff, let's get rid of him, then again, that will come out and that will all be in the clear, but maybe there's a, non can't talk clause in it at the moment. I can't remember what that's called.
yeah, non-disclosure. But
Non-disclosure at the moment, which is why that hasn't come public. I'm not too sure.
But he also said that he was surprised by it, and I think that's genuine from a lot of the other stuff that I've seen. There was
Well,
sort of nothing concrete getting around as a rumor beforehand. It's like the best kept secret in Formula One.
see, Bernie Eccleston said the same thing. He said he was talking to Horner um, last week, and everything was fine. And he was talking about Max and talking about the improvements on the car. It was just a normal conversation. He didn't then go on and said that if that was something that was in the works and meant to be kept hush hush, that he would have known about it still.
Yeah, and we'll circle back around to this point because it also, if he knew about it, if he even had a whiff of it, why would he have turned down talking to Ferrari? If he did, and that's what he said, that he had no interest, why would he have done that knowing that the writing was on the wall at Red Bull?
Which
And I've got some theories on that, but it's a
that
big question.
that leads me back to the Max has said or Yoss has said he's got to go, and they've
Yeah.
gone okay.
So perfect segue into the next question that I have you, which is should they have tossed the Yoss?
Yes,
That took me ages to come up with, but I was pretty proud of it. Should they have tossed the Yoss? Now listen to I've got before we give a solid yes, and I'm 100% in your camp, but I extend it to that they should have let Max and Yoss go. So against putting everything in, because they've literally this is part of his downfall, is that they've put everything into Max, and so they should. He's obviously a phenomenal driver. We carry on about it every week, but no driver in any sport, no one individual is bigger than the team. Doesn't matter what sport it is. It doesn't even matter about solo sports. That individual is still not bigger than the team. I know that sounds like a stupid thing to say, but if they didn't have the right physio and the right diet and the right blah, 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 and the right all that stuff around them, they wouldn't be who they are. So having one driver be bigger than the team is a dangerous precedent to set. And we're about to see all that unfold. And we spoke about the end of a dynasty.
and no other team really has ever done that to this extent. Even when we talk about Schumacher, when we talk about Hamilton, when we talk about Vettel, they've always had their second driver has always been second in the World Constructor points or third in the Drivers Constructor. They've always had equal. When Hamilton, when Hamilton crashed, like Bottas was there, and before Bottas, like there's every sort of team that's gone through this generational driver has had the secondary, generational driver that if Hamilton wasn't there and Bottas was in the Mercedes, I don't have any concerns in saying that he would have been a world champion.
Well, and
Because
even look at what McLaren have done now.
Correct. Yeah, they've got
They've got
two world
two
champions.
drivers, both that can drive the car. Like, so teams win championships, not
Well,
drivers.
they've always had every other team's always had a Scottie Pippen.
Yeah,
By the way, the
100%.
Bulls analogy, and at the moment they've got Max Verstappen and a bench warmer.
Yeah, 100% they do. And that's not to criticize Yuki. That's this issue that we've spoken about before, where the second seat in that team is tainted. It's been tainted since Danny got out of it, and it's still tainted, and it will be. Well, maybe now that'll change it, and maybe that's part of the reason why he's gone. But so putting everything in the Max, that's a no for me. For the yes side of it, obviously he's an intergenerational talent. There's no question about it. He's one of the greatest. He's going to go down as one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time. There is nobody else like him in the paddock at the moment that they could get. And obviously he has a massive draw of a crowd, particularly in Europe. So now, with those positions put to you, are you still firmly that they should absolutely have gone the other way on this and said, you know what, we don't care, Max, we'll activate the clause for you mid-season and off you go?
Depends on the pressure. See, I'm all for tossing Yoss, but I'm always just get rid of him. I don't think his fiery input still is warranted in terms of Max's growth as a human.
Well, the only thing he brings to the team is influence on Max, and that's not a good thing for the team.
No. So I mean, it's like having a standover guy standing next to you the entire time. Like
Yep.
it's not a good thing.
While you're getting a tattoo done, and he's threatened the tattoo artist, and it turns out to be "I love Mum" rather than what you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So I think that the Yoss influence needed to go. I think that's the Yoss's attitude and the Yoss's influence and the stuff that he comes out and says in the media needed to stop. So whether or not it's a media blackout for him, say, look, you can still stay around, but you can't you can't talk shit to the media, because that's just
Yeah, they need to gag him.
yeah, literally, yeah,
100%. And he'll say, "I never said anything," because he will. But they need to gag him.
and I'll hurt anyone who says otherwise.
And particularly with a new boss coming in as well. So, we go, again, when we get the facts kind of right, we say that in jest because we get the facts right a heck of a lot of the times. But we said a few months ago that they should clean the slate and promote everybody from Racing Bulls to Red Bull. Now, that's kind of what's happened, where Laurent Mikis has stepped in as the intermittent replacement head of Red Bull. And so he's moved up from Racing Bulls and they're promoted internally. But he's now got to sort of pick up the pieces of what's left of the season. And he's got to complete this engine project that they've got going on. They've got to complete building the 2026 car. And I just wonder if that is too much for someone to step into. Now, Ford's come out and recommitted to their project and said that they're going to be, going to continue to go ahead with it. And it leads me to my next sort of line of questioning for you on this, which is,
Can I just ask you a question before we roll through this one?
absolutely.
Is is this not a bit Otmar-esque from Alpine, where they've just
I don't think anything's like that.
no, just in terms of that, he may like Horner may not be the problem in terms of a lot of stuff internally with the way that the team's running, and that's where they've just gone. Well, he is the problem because listening to outside influence.
Yeah, I think that the second bit is probably the thing. So, the external influence, and I don't know enough about the Otmar situation and Flavio and whether he had any influence in that outcome there. But I don't know, because we've been on this for a while about the fact that I think they needed a full change. So I don't think that it's a bad thing that Christian's gone. I just don't think they've got rid of enough. I think they've got, when you go to rip the Band-Aid off and that first little bit hurts and so you stop, I think that that's what they've done here.
Yeah, so I think it's him and two other of his team that have been stepped away
Yeah,
because
there's
of
head of marketing, and I
yeah,
think another
yeah. But
engineer, was it?
that's but that's not again not the entire salad.
So, what I was going to ask you is, have they made Racing Bulls the sacrificial cow here on their way to trying to fix Red Bull? And in doing that, so obviously they get paid for the points. Now, Racing Bulls haven't had the strongest last couple of weeks. Well, their last race anyway wasn't that great. Isaac Hadjar's had a couple of bad runs, and I'm not blaming the drivers at all. And we know that there's circumstances around both of those things, but what they've done is they've had this really successful unit running all year, even when they switched out Yuki and put Lawson back into Racing Bulls. And then they've gone, you know what, guys, hold my beer. We're about to destroy both of our seasons, and we're just going to upset the apple cart rather than say, cool, well, Christian's going to run to the end of the year. Christian, at the end of the year, you're gone. Enjoy your tour of duty after 20 years, and we're going to leave Racing Bulls to try and bring home some team bacon because Red Bull's not going to do that.
Which is why I think there has to be something at play. There's got to be something that we don't know yet, and whether or not that's the Joss clause or the Max clause or the lawsuit or something, because as successful as he is in being the only person to have ever ran this team, I think unless something untoward had happened in the background, he deserved that. He deserved that finish of the season, and then it's all right, cool, see you later type scenario, and handling a little bit differently. So you are correct, especially look how strong Visa Cash App was when they started with Yuki and Hadjar at the start of the season. They looked phenomenal. And then the whole interrupt of Lawson going back into the car that drives differently than the Red Bull. So he's had to find his feet again, where Yuki was the strongest, he's had the most experience in that car, strong driver, points finishes, all that sort of stuff. So you are correct. I think they have, but I think in doing so, they're just going to tank both of the teams, where we might find that, they're eighth and sixth on the constructors, which would just be unheard of. But at what benefit do they have in doing that, even for next season? So and that's where I'm stuck in this loop of brain thought that there has to have been something happen for this to happen. Not
Yeah,
just a move of not just a decision or something. Yeah.
I saw Christian say in the post race, I think it was the post race or maybe it was the pre race stuff that the team principals do before or obviously after Silverstone, where they were talking about the fact that, like what you're saying now, nobody knows what happens next season. And so to make any big moves without watching and waiting, like we don't know that next season that Mercedes isn't going to be dead last. Now, the likelihood of them being dead last with their experience and knowledge and car building and all that sort of stuff, the reason why Adrian Newey's gone to Aston Martin is less likely. But everybody's going to be in a new car next year. So, like, you're gambling, changing now is gambling with petrol and a matchstick. Like it really is. So
Especially,
why would Max make that decision now rather than waiting until next season? And so as you say, something must have happened for them to push Horner outside of the controversies of the past.
yeah, especially with you saying the changing of cars. Horner's been through a lot of rig changes, a lot of car changes, engine changes, and everything, and it's always built up to be a respectable car and a winning car. And having him you'd think having him at the front of the team when it's changing again would be the goal, because he knows what he's doing, obviously. Which again just rolls me back to the something's happened, and I've been just going to be interested to see what it is. He did
If
come
we
out
ever
and
find out.
say, correct. He did come out and say he's excited, for what's happening in the future and things like that. So I don't know. Is there some Easter eggs being planted?
Yeah, look, and we again, we'll move on. We're trying to not make this a full blown hour show tonight, but we're steadily heading our way there. The future of Horner, we spoke about Ferrari, we spoke about Max's future and the obvious choices for him being either Mercedes or Aston Martin, given his after Formula One aspirations. Ferrari also obviously fits in that mix, and we had spoken about that briefly as an option for Horner to go to, and we went through that at the last show. So I have an alternative theory on his next move, but what do you think? What do you think? Is this the end for him in Formula One? Is his experience too great for him to be like? Are we going to see a Jordan-esque Wizards type outcome for Horner? Like, what are you thinking?
I think he's too valuable in Formula One to this to be the end. I think anyone outside of the Red Bull outside of Red Bull team would be silly not to have him in a role. Seeing what he's done, seeing what he's created, seeing what he's been a part of, his driver selection, all that sort of stuff, it'd be almost dumb not to have him in a role. But again, it depends on what's caused the him to get out the door of Red Bull now.
The thing that interests me about the team principal role is you look at Flavio, and we sort of have spoken and said that his type of personality doesn't fit in modern Formula One. Now, Christian is not that far away from a Flavio type personality.
He's definitely teetering.
And then you look at Zach Brown, you look at Toto, even you look at the clones of Toto, and they have a lot broader understanding of how they need to be presented and what their role is. And so, obviously Zach's not team principal.
No.
He's the CEO of McLaren.
Yeah.
And so he
Adrian
brings,
Seller.
yeah, so he brings marketing to it, and he's brought all these people in around him. Toto is the same. He's an owner or a part owner of that team. And hires the people around him. And the biggest difference between them and Christian is that Christian hasn't had those people for a while now around him, and obviously hasn't been able to keep them together. So we looked at Ferrari off the back of the rumors, and I think that people romanticize about the idea of getting Ferrari back to its glory days in the Schumacher period, being the longest part of it. But do you think Christian can deliver that with Lewis?
I don't think Christian has the personality for Ferrari. I don't think he has the mindset for Ferrari. But to be fair, could probably change everything and fix Ferrari because he is different. I think I think romanticizing. I don't even think it's romanticizing Ferrari anymore. I think it's talking about Hamilton. I think they're romanticizing the idea of Hamilton winning another championship at Ferrari as the piece. And I think we saw a few images today of Horner and Hamilton in Ferrari gear and Toto and Max in Mercedes gear, which would be
Be
hilarious to see.
delicious. Salivating at the idea of that.
But Mercedes with Max, obviously, but Horner going anywhere like Ferrari doesn't make sense to me.
You've just set off an alarm bell about it, because the most Ferrari thing for Ferrari to do, and they've done it time and time and time and time again,
Grab onto a sinking ship.
is that if they appointed Horner, they would then ignore everything he had to say and tell him how he's going to run the team, and it would produce exactly the same result that it's producing now. Because as we've said in Fred's defense multiple times, he's not the problem. the establishment is the problem. So if they did appoint Horner, I think that's probably you've hit the nail on the head as to why he wouldn't go there anyway, because he wouldn't be allowed to run it his way. He would. You can't say that it's a Ferrari; it's a shitbox.
Yes.
And I mean that is the summary of Ferrari, even as far back as the 70s when allegedly Niki Lauda said that. So I've come up with a different theory.
I was gonna say I've seen grazed a couple of your notes, and I'm very intrigued to hear what you have to say in this because
Now I am the biggest critic of the team that I'm about to suggest that he would go to and probably dominate at. Now, part of the downfall for Horner is he's not a team owner. So he's an employee of Red Bull and he has been sacked, so that they say. So I think given that he's reasonably well off these days, I think he's on something like 30 mil a year. His wife, if you're not aware, is Jerry Halliwell of Ginger Spice fame, hence the Spice Girls at the top of the show. So he's got some coin, and there's only one team on the grid who needs some coin, and they're in the midst of renting their seats out to get that coin to stay alive. They also have a vacancy for a team principal at the moment because their team principal left. And
with
that
all
is
the coin.
with all the coin, and that is Alpine. Now, they're based in the UK. For those of you who don't know, they're actually basically down the street from Red Bull. Flavio doesn't want to be team principal. He's just inherited it because everyone else has left. It means that he doesn't have to move. He doesn't have to learn a new language. And if he buys into the team, which he can have influence over it. It also means, from a personal perspective, that he can get rid of Pierre Gasly, which would do me any number of favours. He might even bring back Jack.
Can you imagine Pierre getting word?
Fired again.
Obviously, Pierre's already been fired by Horner once before. Can you imagine getting fired by the same boss at a different job?
What if he does a team swap? What if he goes to Red Bull again? But I think that there is, and you know what? It would be Red Bull-esque, taking a team from the bottom back to the top. Well, not that they've ever been at the top, but taking a team that's at the bottom to the top of Formula One. You know, equally, he's not 31 anymore; he's 51.
He also wants to build. I don't know this for sure, but you would assume that he wants to build a permanent legacy in Formula One. So this wouldn't be how he wants to go out. Imagine the Horner story of getting sacked from Red Bull and then buying into Alpine and creating another legacy and just flipping them off on the way past.
Yeah, so I mean, this makes sense to me.
It had not even crossed my mind is that there's an option, and then as soon as I saw a couple of the words in your notes, the electrodes in my brain started firing at an alarming rate, like I had 7 monsters in a row. It makes sense. It is about the only move on the Formula One grid, like in the Formula One paddock, that has no buts. It's all pretty greenlit.
Well, there is one but, and that is, could Flavio and him coexist? Because they are both extraordinarily strong personalities.
Can you imagine the parties they would have? It'd be Wolf of Wall Street-esque in the Alpine office every single day.
They'd roll out the lewds,
Yeah.
and then there'd be midget throwing at midday, like far out. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it that way, but I think you're right. I mean, and Flavio's an old dog, like as in he's an old style team principal, old style, team manager.
We've seen Horner work with the old helmet, so we know that he can get along with the elderly and help them with their medication. So he Alpine. That's what I said. Like there's a lot of green flags here and arrows leading towards it.
And there's a lot of staff that have gone from Red Bull to Alpine as well. And the one thing that I go back that I have seen repeatedly is that a lot of the staff at Red Bull were upset to find out that Christian had been sacked. And so you can say all the other things about him and obviously messages and all that other stuff. But obviously, if you've got that many people at your employee who are upset that you have been terminated, you're obviously still doing the right things, and you're obviously still well liked. So could that then produce an exodus that kills the bull completely?
So
We said it. We said
we
this
did.
could be dynasty ending, team ending, and that they could go by the wayside of, the old Formula One teams that no longer exist. That could happen very well at Red Bull. We mentioned as well, and we're gonna try and cram them all in. We said, is it time for Red Bull to sell as
I was
well?
just about to say we did call that. Is it time to sell? We did say the Ford coming on board. We have heard rumors that Ford want to get involved in the Formula One again. If they've already got an engine rolling in that
Porsche.
car, and Porsche, yes, in that car, it's going to. It is, and as much as I said, it's the hype of Formula One. Would you sell? They are going to make the most money from it because of how successful
How
the
much?
team is.
How much?
Oh,
Let's try and nail down some more of these premonitions that we have. So, if they sell, how much do you reckon Red Bull as a team would be worth? Lock, stock. We're walking out. Here's the keys. Good luck in 2027.
I'm just trying to get an idea here. So Renault, I was just having a look at when Renault sold their team.
Can I interrupt you before you do that? Because you're across this. I think you will be across this. Just remember that the Lakers just sold for 10 billion. The Lakers, like globally one of the biggest brands of all time, 10 billion.
So put this into a formula that is very, very good to whatever I was heading, probably more. But Renault sold 24% of the team to when they went from Renault to Alpine for just over $900 million.
Shit, that's
Potential.
less than I thought.
That was only 24% of the team. The whole team predicted price at that stage for
Was that 4
Renault
billion?
was $1.4 billion.
How does that work? How's 24% of the team 900 mil, but it's only worth 1.4?
I
That
don't.
doesn't math in my mind.
The math definitely does not math.
That means someone paid too much. Way too much.
So now we're going to go to one of the most successful Formula One teams.
And remember, there's only two owners.
Currently, yes.
One has 51, one has 49%. But they also poured however much money in to get it to where it is now, established facilities, all that.
I see, and that's where it's different. When you talk about the Lakers selling for 10 billion, they don't have the furniture that comes with it.
There's no assets. That's true. I mean, because LeBron's not an asset, but but equally, literally, he's not, because he owns all his own shit,
yeah.
Right? So like he doesn't come with it. You get Bronny, but you don't get LeBron.
Yeah. So like $100 billion.
So that means 50 bill a pop.
Mm.
That would make them worth more than Liverpool.
But again, understanding
that comes with facilities. There's a stadium. There's
not the facilities that Red Bull have.
But there is technically. I mean, it's got a brand new stadium. Well, it's not brand new. It's renovated. It would make them a bigger brand. It would more expensive than Elon Musk buying Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It would make it more expensive than even with inflation. It would be more expensive than Zuck's buying Instagram. Like, I mean, these are the numbers that we're talking about. So I think you're probably closer with your majority stake. One of the two parties sells. Red Bull don't sponsor anymore. But you're in the multiple billions. $5 billion to probably get the deal done.
Do you reckon that little?
Do you reckon that little? Like, for a family to get $5 billion to go and invest somewhere else and be out of the Formula One circus with no financial... Remembering they're in the gun as well. If it all goes south and they lose Verstappen and all this sort of stuff, like, I'm assuming that Red Bull's balance sheet's probably pretty strong in terms of the team, the racing team.
But just think of what else
Big
you're
coin.
buying. You're not only buying the two current race cars.
Access to the pictures. Is that where you're going with it? You'd find out the truth. You wouldn't be able to say anything, but you'd find out the truth.
you're not only buying two current Formula One race cars, you're buying the history. You're buying all of the cars.
Do you know what we've forgotten as well?
What have we forgotten?
You're buying 4 cars,
You're buying
not
two
two.
teams. There's AlphaTauri.
Yeah, I'd sell that off. You know what I'd do? I'd buy the lot for 5 or 10, and then I'd sell half of it for 7 or
Yeah,
6 or
because
7, and then make off with the good bits.
because 24% of 1.4 billion is 900,000. Remember, so with
It
that maths,
it explains a lot about why Alpine's where they are. If that's the math they did, like 24%, 900, value 1.4, no problems.
no worries.
Terrible investment. Anyway, look again. We've gone off path here as we tend to do, but I think that's our tinfoil hat red herring out in space thing that what happens is it implodes and gets sold.
Yeah,
Implodes and gets sold. Red Bull will pull out as the main title sponsor for the car, and off we go.
and Horner to Alpine. I've never heard any of the theories this week. Sorry, today. Any of the theories make as much sense as that. So,
Yeah, well,
hats off to your brain.
again, you've heard it here first and only. We haven't heard, as we said, any real reason yet for Horner being fired. So hopefully that comes out before the next show, that there's some sort of concrete put below that, because at the moment it's all speculation, as we've spent the last 50 minutes or so talking about.
It's a quick 10-minute podcast.
We said it was going to be a quick 10-minute podcast. Last but not least, this does mean, I think, probably the capitulation of Drive to Survive, because all the talent is leaving that show. And if the project gets cancelled locally in Australia, well, then Drive to Survive, gone.
Without no Gunter and no Horner, who are they going to have?
And no Danny. There's no personality. Yep. Toto will be there on there. Toto is like the Hypno Toad from fucking Futurama. He'll be sat on there just going, makey no. Like, anyway. Drive to Survive will be all over, I think, as well.
We'll just have Will Buxton sitting there saying, so to run a Formula One team, you must actually be in a Formula One team.
Hopefully they could get him along with the guy from Ferrari who said it's wet, it must be water in the car. Then it's water in the car. Imagine those two having a stoush for an hour-long episode once a week for 8 or 9 weeks. That'd be great.
Can you imagine being in Will Buxton's household? Just the way he must describe things.
How would they get anything done? What are you making for dinner? Oh, well. Anyway, we continue on. So, look, obviously, there's lots to play out on this still, but they're just two blokes' thoughts on what has happened. Is it a Verstappen factor, as you've put forward? Is it just a change of guard? What is it? Well, I guess we'll find out, hopefully, and it'll unravel across the balance of the season. It will be interesting to see how they get on from here.
Once again, you heard it here first on the Top Step several months ago that this was all going to happen.
You certainly heard it her first.
You heard it her first.
You certainly heard it for her first. But that is, we'll bring this one to an end. As I said, we did delay, and I know there was a heap of you out there waiting, even for this. I got messages today saying, "Oh, looking forward to the next podcast." So show 19 will be out after show 20 or the Horn show. Wherever you are, thank you for joining us. Let us know in your comments. Let us know if you think we're absolutely full of it. I'm sure someone will drop it. The reason I put the Drive to Survive thing in, by the way, is just to reward all those people who said that the only reason we've got opinions about Formula One is because of Drive to Survive. I haven't forgotten that. I really enjoy it when people say that our opinions are formed on that, given our breadth of knowledge of Formula One. But absolutely, we're here for Drive to Survive. Thank you very much. Maybe that was Will. Maybe it was Will. He's like, your comments will. Anyway, I digress again, as always, but thank you for joining in. Rhys, thank you for putting together that awesome intro. As always, Rhys is responsible for all of the talented stuff that happens on this show. I just put together the notes and upload the video to the interwebs. So thanks for jumping on Impromptu Podcast. We will have an episode next week like we had planned. We've got a couple that we're going to record. So keep an eye out for those, and episode 19 as well, our post-Silverstone in-depth analysis. That'll be up. I don't know, I'll put that up sometime. So there'll be a spate of stuff coming out from us.
Stuff.
Look, no one's going to watch it. They're going to watch the Horn show. I can see it now, and I feel disappointed because there's a lot of jewels in that show 19. But anyway,
It's good. It's good. Good, mate.
that's it.
Yes.
We will roll out with our typical outro. As always, thank you for joining us wherever you are. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment across all of the platforms, mate. Thank you very much for this one. We will see you next time.
What have you done?
What have I done? That's not it. There we go.
Just wanted to see that picture again.
Top Gun Ricardo.
Oh.